So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Brexit again, and the UK being very confusing, and it looks like more posturing from the UK, considering that we are nearly in November. And I think Boris Johnson said something on the lines of, if a deal's not done by the end of October, then we leave on no deal, or as he likes to call it, Australian terms, which is another euphemism for no deal, which is something we're going to be talking about towards the end of the video. So if we look at this, this article from 5 days ago, and then we got one from yesterday, which says something very different to this one. So let's dig into this one first, and then the next one. So talks between the UK and the EU over a post-Brexit trade agreement are over, Downing Street has said. Number 10 argued there was no point in discussions continuing next week unless the EU was prepared to discuss the detailed legal text of a partnership. You got Lord Frost has told Michel Barnier there was now no basis for planned talks on Monday. Number 10 said the two sides had agreed to talk again next week by phone. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, shouts out Dana, I think that's how you meant to pronounce it, tweeted that the Brussels negotiating team would go to London after the week to intensify discussions. France's Europe Minister Clement Bonnet told BBC Newsnight, while the EU would not pursue a deal at any cost, we will listen to what the UK side wants to say to us. So meanwhile, ratings agency Moody has downgraded the UK's credit status, citing failed economic strength due to the coronavirus pandemic and uncertainty over Brexit. So we've already got some of the impact from Brexit and the coronavirus, and that means our interest rates for borrowing will go up, meaning it will be more expensive for us to borrow and harder for us to borrow as well because our credit rating has gone down. The Prime Minister said this week's EU summit as the deadline for the two sides to agree a deal. So this week's EU summit, so this is literally this week. But there are still major disagreements over fishing rights and state help for businesses. And the UK government has hardened up its message to the UK over the course of Friday. In the morning, Boris Johnson said the country had to get ready to trade next year without an agreement. Although he did not say talks were over, he suggested the EU were unwilling to consider the UK's preferred option of a comprehensive free trade deal based on the bloc's existing agreement with Canada. The UK, he added, must look at the alternative, which he suggested was Australia's much more limited set of agreements with the EU, which is essentially no deal. And that's why they keep referencing Australia. Even Australia don't like their current terms. That's why they're working towards a more comprehensive deal, and it'll have a huge impact on us. Part of me, I'm not 100% sure why we can't really get a Canada deal. I know that not everything with the UK and Canada is tariff-free, and there's still issues around that with specifics, but also the fact that we are on the EU's doorstep, which does cause issues for the EU, because obviously you've got the countries that are closer to each other geographically are more likely to trade with each other in higher volume, and so that might be one of the reasons why the EU don't want to give us a Canada style deal. Also, there's the point of, if we do have a free trade agreement with the EU and we start deregulating everything, that's going to impact the EU, because either it deregulates or it gives the UK a massive financial edge and a massive sort of manufacturing edge over the EU. Hence why the EU don't want that on their doorstep. They don't want a Singapore on the Thames. That's their nightmare situation. And so here we go. So this article written on Wednesday, less than 24 hours ago. Contradicts what the UK was saying, kind of. So the UK are ready to welcome the EU to continue negotiations over a post-Brexit trade deal, says number 10. So we've got some mixed messages here. The two sides' chief negotiators, Lord David Frost and Barnier, spoke on the phone after talks were stalled last week. Following the conversation, Downing Street said the pair had jointly agreed a set of principles for heading this intensified phase of talks. So basically, we're going to be probably running into the same things. I think the UK has given a bit more on fishing. And it's the level playing field, and I think state aid. I still don't understand why state aid is such a big deal for the UK, considering that realistically we don't do a lot of state aid in this country, especially compared to other countries. I mean, the NHS being kind of taken out of the equation. I think other EU countries do far more state aid with things like trains. I think France has a significant share in, I think it's one of the big energy companies like EFD or something like that. I'd have to check that in post. But yeah, EFD or something like that, they have a large share in that, and also there are governments that have large shares in other companies within the EU, specifically trains. So it's very strange that state aid would be a sticking point here. The full statement from number 10 said it was clear a significant gap remains between our positions in the most difficult areas, and it was entirely possible that negotiations will not succeed. But it added, we are ready with the EU to see if it is possible to bridge them in intensive talks. Earlier, Mr. Barnier said a deal would be possible if we are both ready to work constructively and in the spirit of compromise over the next day on the basis of legal text. Time is short. I find it really interesting that the UK is constantly saying the EU need to compromise and they need to listen to us, we're sovereign, all this blah blah blah. But the EU are constantly using the phrase we instead of they, which I find really interesting. Both the UK and the EU are calling each other to compromise ahead of the looming December deadline for a deal. From January 1st, the so-called transition period will be over, which has seen the UK continue to follow the EU trading rules while a deal has been negotiated. If an agreement is not reached, the UK will move on to trade with the EU according to the default rules set by the World Trade Organization. Key areas of disagreement that remain between the two sides include fishing rights and post-Brexit competition rules, so that's state aid and other kind of regulations. Lord Frost said that these intensive talks will take place every day while the two sides see if a deal can be done. And so we'll keep an eye on this. Some decent analysis here from Katya Adler. You could be forgiven for thinking what we have witnessed over the past few days is a bit of political theatre, cover for the government, post-chess beating, to return to the negotiating table when they know time has now come for tough compromises to be made. EU leaders also went out of their way to sound tough on Brexit at their summit last week. Privately, a number of EU figures now admit it was a misstep. So EU figures are basically, it sounds like top EU politicians saying maybe we are being too aggressive here in our stance and that's what's causing a problem. But at the same time, the UK is doing the same thing. But EU leaders play to domestic gallery too. They want to show that they were standing up to the UK, that leaving the EU doesn't pay, and that the EU interests would be defended. And here's the key here, that they don't want other countries leaving the EU, and that by playing hardball with the UK, that's the only way to guarantee that, really. And so that's the key here, really. And that's why this is good analysis. They accept that there must be compromise too now if this trade and security deal with the EU has a chance of being agreed. Time is short and trust is in low supply. I think if the EU was smart, or smarter in my opinion, I think they'll put Galileo on the table, access to Galileo, and that would get them a lot of leeway in other areas. But that's just me. Especially because the satellites, the UK program's failed. So that's a bit more bargaining power that you have. So the EU has set the end of October as a deadline to reach a deal. But if we look here, that's literally about 9 days. The day after the Prime Minister's deadline. So Boris Johnson has pledged to walk away if a deal is not agreed by the 15th of October. I'm pretty sure we're in October, Boris. He was saying the talks are over. That's in this article here. A face-to-face meeting between the negotiators was cancelled for Monday, replaced by phone calls, but Wednesday's conversation appeared to have been more fruitful, so they're saying that, there has been a bit of movement on Wednesday. That was yesterday. This video will go out today. Number 10 said Mr. Barnier had acknowledged the UK's demand for the EU to be serious about talks intensifying on all issues and bring the negotiations to a conclusion, and that he had accepted he was dealing with an independent sovereign country. Shock. It was also the EU chief negotiator had accepted movement would be needed from both sides in the talks if an agreement was not reached. The statement added, on the basis of the conversation, we are ready to welcome the EU team to London to resume negotiations over this week. We have jointly agreed a set of principles for handling this intensified phase of talks. It is clear that significant gaps remain between our positions in the most difficult areas, but we are ready with the EU to see if that's possible to bridge. And here, Downing Street also reiterated its pledge to leave the transition period without a deal or on Australian terms, and called on businesses and travellers to prepare since changes were coming, whether an agreement was reached or not. And the thing is here, what the BBC have failed to do is actually talk about what Australian terms are, and kind of there's no name on this piece. This bit was written by Katya Adler. I don't know if the rest of it was, but if we actually go to our next clip here, when what's his name, Alok Sharma is asked what an Australian deal is, he gives this answer.
Going forward, so
what would be the difference between an Australia deal and a no deal, Secretary of State?
The Australia deal is the deal that you have with countries where you're predominantly working on a sort of WTO basis. So
it's a no deal.
Depends. You can use the phrase no deal, but the point is that it is a deal.
We keep hearing Australia deal because I don't see any point of distinction between Australia deal and no deal.
Again, it's.
Let me do it another way. There is no difference.
Well, Nick. So again,
persuade me otherwise.
It's a question of semantics at the end of the day, sure. But what I'm saying to you is that
we've got the future of this nation, and it's resting on semantics. That's a bit worrying, isn't it?
I mean, this is some of the most basic questioning going. Alex Sharma crumbling at the seams of it, saying it is a question of semantics, which in realistically case it is. We know that EU does have some arrangements with the EU, or Australia does have some arrangements with the EU, but it's not comprehensive. Australia doesn't even like the current terms that they have. That's why they're trying to get a deal with the EU. So we're trying to be like a country which wants a trade deal with the bloc that we're actually going to leave, which is, you know, bizarre. But you can see it's semantics, and the reason why an Australia-style deal is being pushed is because that sounds less scary than saying no deal. Because no deal sounds like a cliff edge. Australia-style deal sounds like we're trying to be like another country, but Australia has its own sets of deals with other countries in the vicinity. I think it has deals with China and Japan. I wonder why it has deals with China and Japan, because they're close geographically. They're far closer to China and Japan than they are to us. So they're more likely to get a deal with these countries because it's going to help them more. But, you know, you can see here, you know, Alex Sharma crumbling here over like Nick Ferrari's joke questions, really.
There are two very clear approaches. There are two very clear approaches to this. We can either go down the route of doing the sort of arrangement that the EU has with Australia. The other is that we can do it down the Canada route. Now, that's been our union.
And so what we can see here is the government are doing a lot more posturing. I think the EU are doing a lot of posturing as well. And so it's important to make that distinction, but at the same time it is quite stark that the UK honestly keep saying that we are a sovereign nation, you can't do this to us, you need to compromise, and the EU saying, okay, look, we the word we need to compromise, and that both sides need to climb down a bit. And the fact that EU leaders also said that they went out of their way to sound tough last week, and that perhaps was a misstep, because realistically both sides want a deal. The only thing that you don't want is to give us a better deal than what other countries have. Now, what we want is a Canada deal or something that's better than that, but that you won't give that because we are on the doorstep, and there's a very good chance of us doing things like deregulation and cutting workers' rights, because that's what conservative governments do. That's what they do best. That's why they don't care about workers' rights. The fact that they're doing 2/3 furlough and half pay furlough and all that stuff is evident of that. So what we can see here is a lot more posturing here. I think that you must be slightly nervous because they must think a no deal is very possible, but they put in a lot more preparation work on a no deal than we have. Shouts out to my boy Dano. He would probably point that out in the comments if he's about. They have put in far more work in countries like the Netherlands, where they have more ports and also a better ability to process goods through their ports than we do in Dover. And they put in the preparation work, and also the fact because they use a massive landmass, they can build ports in strategic places like in the Netherlands, in France, and spread it over a certain gap, which will add costs, obviously, especially transport costs, but that's far better than what we have done because we are far more limited in that respect. So anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.